All right. After a week break, I want to welcome everyone back to Chassidus from Misnagdim, Thursday nights at Congregation Schwartz, 1575 Coney Island Avenue, the Midwood section of Brooklyn. And we want to thank the very worthy organization, TorahAnytime.com, for making these shiurim available to those who cannot attend in person. But we invite all those who can to come. The Dibuk Chaverim, the Pilpul Chaverim definitely helps the shiur. I want to dedicate the schus of tonight's Torah learning to the merit of the Refuah Shleima of Rav Yashav Yosef Shalom ben Chaim Musha, and to Rav Belsky, to Rav Adas Rashiva, Rav Chaim Yisrael ben Chanatziro, Refuah Shleima. Okay, those of you who were here for the first installment of the series know that one of the things that I disputed, that I considered, that I mulled over, was the dissonance between the perception, the historical reality, the perception, or I should say the conventional wisdom, that Chassidus was a grassroots movement for the salt of the earth people, for people who were not too sharp or not too well educated, and so on and so forth, and the obvious men of genius, the Gaonim, the Iluyim, who were attracted, and to this day still are attracted to the movement. What we're going to see in the shtickle that we learned tonight is we're going to see this interplay. We're going to see the work of an obvious genius, one of the Svarim that just drips of bikiyas, of profundity, of an awareness of kol chadrei atayra, of nigla, of nister, the bnei sascha, on the one hand, and on the other hand, extolling the virtues of the simple, and one might even say simple-minded, salt of the earth Jews, which is, again, something that you see very much throughout the history of Chassidus. That's number one. Number two, for those of you who are here for the first year, for the Minchas Chinuch year, we're going to see a very interesting segue. For those of you who weren't, I want to just repeat a very interesting question that the Minchas Chinuch had on Sefer Chinuch. Sefer Chinuch paskened that women are pater from the mitzvahs of Zechiras Amalek and not forgetting Amalek. Zachar and Tishkach, both of them, women are exempt. Why? Because both of these mitzvahs, the Tama mitzvah, the reason behind both of these mitzvahs of not forgetting and for remembering, is basically to keep the embers of enmity glowing, that when the opportunity for waging war against Amalek will present itself, you'll be at ready, so to speak. But women who don't wage war, this is the Chinuch's argument. Women don't have to wage war anyway, so why do they have to remember? So he has a lot of kashas on the sheet. He argues on it. He says women definitely are mechuyev in Zachar and Leisishkach. But one of the pointed questions he asks is, Mi Amid beside Hashem, how does he know the secrets of Hashem? Why he gave a mitzvah? He's conjecturing that the reason for the mitzvah is the better to be able to wage war. Maybe even after Mashiach comes, and maybe even after Amalek will be totally annihilated, and the mitzvah of waging war no longer applies, yeah? Maybe the mitzvah of Zachar and Leitishkach will still be there. So I just want to say, by way of introduction, that we're going to learn tonight, Mitzvah Hashem and the Bnei Yisachar, we're going to learn a whole different approach to what these two mitzvahs are all about. They're not preparatory to waging war on Amalek. They're ends in their own right, so to speak. All right, so pass them around over there, pass them around on this side. And this is in Mamare Chodesh Adar. He has a mimer called Milchama Hashem, very appropriate, Milchama Hashem b'Amalek and Adar. And we're doing the second drasha. The first drasha was a little bit too esoteric, too much, too rich for my diet, too much esospheres, and so on. Okay. Let's begin. Zachar Seshasel Amalek. B'medrash Huva b'Yalkut. Mashal l'melech shoyle pardes. V'hamid kelev shaita al pischai. V'holach ayavay shel melech lignav min pardes. V'kar kelev begadav. Kol pam sheretz hamelech lahazkel le'maisa harosh asa shalach lignav min pardes. Amar hamelech. Kama kelev shaita uzeh shekar begadecha. Here's a mashal the Medrash gives in the Tam of Zechiras Ma'aseh Amalek. There was a king, he had a subject, he had a beautiful orchard or a vineyard that obviously was for his pleasure and for his partaking of. And the subject decided, I'm going to steal into this pardes, and I'm going to eat the fruits from this pardes. And the Melech had a watchdog. And when the subject approached the orchard, the dog attacked and ripped up his clothes. And the Melech said, what a mad dog. Can you imagine what a mad dog is? But obliquely, implicitly, what the king is doing when he keeps on reminding him about the mad dog is his own indiscretion. Why did the dog attack you? We sit here criticizing the dog, but the subject of the king has got to understand that the dog only attacked me because I stepped out of line. I did something wrong. I did something that the king had commanded me not to do. If he commanded me not to do it, it was understood that I shouldn't be doing such a thing. That's the mashal. Let's go to the nimshal. Kach Yisrael Amru. Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu emoyin. Okay, for those of you not familiar, there's not something we're going to learn this week. There's not at the end of Parshas Kisei that we get the kriya for Parshas Zachor from. This is from the end of Parshas B'Shalach. The actual narrative of that first war that any nation waged against Klal Yisrael after Yetzias Mitzrayim appears at the end of the Parshas B'Shalach. Right before the Parsha of Milchemes Amalek, there's a Parsha of Refidim Ein Mayim Lishtos. It was Epsamaisa Nisayan of thirst. And in this case, Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded to hit the rock, not speak to the rock. But there's a very interesting segue. The last pasuk of that Parsha of Refidim reads as follows. There's Shmais Yud Zayin, Pasuk Zayin. The Yikashem HaMakom Masu Meriva. The place was called Masu Meriva. Al Riv B'nai Yisrael, the quarrel of B'nai Yisrael, Al Nasaisim as Hashem. And the way they tested Hashem, Laimar saying, Hayesh Hashem b'kerbeinu imoyin. Is Hashem among us? Is Hashem even here? Brought us out to die of thirst here in the Midbar? Who says Hashem even dwells among us? Immediately, Vayava Amalek. Yeah? Zokt the Yalkut. Yeah? That this rhetorical question, Hayesh Hashem b'kerbeinu imoyin, is stealing into the paradise. The Milcham of Amalek is the guard dog being sicked on the people who should not have been stealing into the paradise. That's how this Yalkut understands it. So there's still Lashon Medrash. Lo yotze Moshe ben Shalom lahaskel ha'maisa hara azu shaloi levaisham. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to humiliate the people by reminding them that they had asked such a horrible question. Hayesh Hashem b'kerbeinu imoyin. V'amalam zocher asher asa l'cha Amalek. Hakel v'aymed al Pesach. Instead, he mentioned the mad watchdog and what he did. Akan l'shaynei. That's the end of the Yalkut, the end of the Medrash. Zoktem ne'isascher ha-Medrash hazel aimer deshuni v'chiu. This Medrash says deshuni and vetzach eifleiben. You're gonna get very lively from the Torah he's about to say, understanding this Medrash. Here are the kashas. Number one. What was shver? There was some irritation, there was some irritant here to the Baal Medrash that he had to come up with this mashal of the orchard and the rabid watchdog. Aleph. Beis. The main thing is not to remember what Amalek did to us. The main thing is to remember what we did to deserve Amalek, to deserve the watchdog biting us. How many people go into Parashat Zachor even thinking about the pasuk of Hayesh Hashem looking before I learned this B'nai Yisrael? I never knew about this. What?
Different of the Shesiras.
Yeah? Asher Ksat Hashem L'kach B'midbar.
Yes.
It's talking specifically about Matzah Meriva or what, some of the other Nisyanis B'midbar. Okay. But here we're connecting the dots specifically between Matzah Meriva, between Refidim, and between Ma'aseh Amalek. So, Bama Yesh Hashem b'kibenu uvezacher azeh ein tzrichen liska Ma'aseh Amalek. It would seem that if you remember this, you have to remember the dog. Yeah, the Iker Chasam Sefer. The main thing is to remember that we were out of line, that we tried to steal into the paradise. Uvehem is mitzvah minyan hatayag liska davka b'peh Ma'aseh Amalek. It's a mitzvah from the minyan tayag 603 to be specific, at least according to the Sefer Chassidus counting, to verbalize it, to remember it verbally, le'sishkach belev, and to not forget in our heart. And he's not finishing the question, but the question is, and what happened to remembering verbally and in our hearts, specifically, this Nisayan of Mariva, when we said, Eshel L'kim B'Kirbeinu. Gimel. L'fi Divrei HaMedrash, L'yiratze L'haske Pisham, V'ama Beremes. According to this Medrash, it sounds like Moshe Rabbeinu, it's also funny, what Moshe Rabbeinu has discretion to decide which Averis to Mechiach them overtly and which implicitly, but at any rate, he didn't want to be Mavayish them. He didn't call Sefer Mishnah Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu is not shy about reminding about the Chet HaEgel, is not shy about reminding them about the Chet HaMeraglim. When B'nai Gad and B'nai Reuven come to him, he says, you're melting the hearts of your brothers just like the Meraglim did. All of a sudden he has to start walking on eggshells when he's being Mechiach Klal Yisrael. Let him say it straight out. Forget about the mad dog. What were you breaking into the paradise for? What's he getting shy? Coy, all of a sudden, Moshe Rabbeinu. The other kashas, you'll understand from what I'm saying, you'll understand what was bothering me. It's going to be the Haftarah this week. Okay, the Maftir is Zachar Sha'asal Amalek, and the Haftarah is the Maisa with Shmuel and Shaul and Agag. Shaul HaMelech lost his Malchus because he didn't fulfill the mitzvah of Mechias Zar Amalek fully and properly. So the lashon over there is Vayashma Shaul Asam Vayivkadem Betlaim. He announced when he mustered an army for this war. It says he allowed them to hear Shaul, and then he counted them with Tlaim. He didn't have them bring in a machzis shekel or a shekel to know his troop strength, to count up how many people he had mustered for the war. Vayifkedem b'tlaim. There was a tlaim. Everyone brought a shayfel along, a little kid, and that's what he counted up. Hine yesh lizbainain lama nemar vayashma that he announced, he allowed them to hear. Loy vayasay vayikbites. The normal verbs for a generalissimo, a warrior king mustering an army, are vayasay for yikbites. Question number one. Number two. Why didn't he hear he's counting sheep? Maybe because he fell asleep at the wheel. When you count sheep, you fall asleep. I don't know. But at any rate, everywhere census in the Torah works with coins. Why over here is it happening with sheep? The gam why is that even important? First of all, it's irregular. It should have been with coins, not with sheep. Second of all, who cares? As long as we know the troop strength. V'anira, al pi ma shekasafti kama pa'amim isra chakir bezek amun alisha Israeli. Okay, now here's the thing. Again, I'm not so behavent. I can't tell you that I've done a survey of all Chassidish Sfarim, but I've seen enough shtiklach of Bnei Yissaschar, and parenthetically, enough shtiklach of Likutei Moharan, Reb Nachum Breslover. I think this is true probably of a lot of Chassidish Kreisen. They're not big chaykrim. They don't like philosophy. They don't like Svarim like the Kuzri. They don't like Svarim like Mar Nevuchim. It's an anathema to them. Amunah pshuta. You have to believe because your father believed, because your Zayda believed, because the Bab is a Gatin. Right? Messiah. It's all about tradition and Amunah pshuta. It's not pshat. I have proofs of God. I have proofs of the afterlife. I have proofs of the resurrection. And that's why I believe in the fundamentals of our faith. It's not about proving things through intellectual inquiry, through philosophical proofs, through mathematical proofs, through hidden codes in the Torah. That's not what it's all about. He's saying it's usher. It's forbidden for a Yid to do that. Maybe for a non-Jew who wants to come to Shav Mitzvah Noach, maybe it's an acceptable approach. But for a Jew, it's usher. And Abbas Avant, what is it? What does one thing have to do with the other? Don't ask any questions yet. Questions are the devil's work. Chakira, it's no good. Don't ask any questions. No, I don't mean that. I mean, give him a chance to develop the thought. Okay, let's read another 15 lines, and then we'll take all questions. Okay. First of all, he touches a pasuk going all the way back to the Av Asylum this way. What's the pasuk? Ki yadativ, I've known him or I've loved him. The different Mepharshim touch this word a different way. That he will command his children and his household after him It's his command that causes them to Shamar Derech Hashem. Why do they keep mitzvahs? Azot T'Sai the Geisen. The Zayda Avram Avinu, our grandfather, Avram Avinu, our patriarch, told us there is a God. He's Mashgiach. He's Mashalem Schai Vaynish. There's Ashras Anishama. All Dikrei Adas. Yitzaveh. He commanded us to Yitzaveh. And that's why we are Shemrei Derech Hashem. Not because we can't do this through independent intellectual inquiry. Upirish Yadativ. How do I touch? What does it mean, Yadativ? Nasati by Bechina Hadas. I invested Avram Avinu with Das. He had the Das. He was the big philosopher king. He was the one who looked at the world and said, is it possible that this capital, this palace, is illuminated without somebody leading it? Miyad Hitzal of Balabiru. We all know a famous medrash. At a very young age, very precocious age. Okay? Avram Avinu was the Mozart of religious philosophy. One medrash says he was 3 years old. Hikaras Bayre. At a very young age, he looked at the world, he put it all together, he saw the integrity of the cosmos, and he said, it's impossible. This polytheistic religion that they're feeding me, it's a crock, it's a bunch of baloney. Can't be. There's got to be a Balabir, there's got to be one central authority that's running everything. So Avram Avinu was the philosopher. He had the Das. Right? We have the Tzivui. Banav is base of Akrav. He's Mitzaveh, the fundamentals of religion. V'tovalahem ha'amuna b'Yerusha b'teva memela. Yeah, it's not just a Yerusha. It's not just a family heirloom that gets passed on from one generation to another. It's biological. It's congenital. It's inborn in us. Hanach Lam Yisrael maminim b'nei maminim. Intrinsically, we're maminim. You should know the God of your father. It doesn't say Da'as ha'alekim. Da'as ha'alekim could be a tzivur from Dovid to Shlomo Shlomo. Who is more shaykh to philosophical inquiry than the Chacham Mikol Adam, the Shlomo Melech, the Yacham Miyad Mikol Adam, right? But that wasn't the tzivur of David HaMelech. Not Da'as ha'alekim. Da'as ha'alekei avicha daika. Know Hashem because I know Hashem, and I know Hashem because Yishai knew Hashem, and Yishai knew Hashem because Friedik Adaris, Bayez, and Yehuda, and Yaakov, and Yitzchak. That's why we know Hashem. That was the tzavah to Shlomo HaMelech. Hainu amuna b'kabal me'avis. V'lo yamar lekecha. I'm sorry, not lekim, lekecha. The perusha marish and esamas l'adav b'chakiri. If it would have said, your God, das lekecha, what makes it my God? How do I take ownership? I take ownership because I found out for myself. I'll go on the path of Avram Avinu. I'll go on the path of Yisrael, the other great Gerim in history. I'll figure it out on my own. That's not what David told Shlomo. Know the God of your father. If you want to quench your thirst on this whole Indian, this is not the sefer you should be looking in. He wrote a lot of Svarim, the Meisoscha. One of them is Mayan Ganim. But still, it's the topic of the shtickle that we're learning tonight. V'hinei ho'amun ha'ba'ala mitzar chakiris ha'seichel nikra riyah. Seeing is believing. Right? When in your mind's eye something appears reasonable to you, something that does not offend your reason or your sensibilities, the verb for that in Lashon HaTalmud and Lashon HaTorah is riyah. I see it. I see it with a clarity. It's proven to me. I see it. I see what you're saying. Not I hear what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Conceptually, seeing something, finding something proven and reasonable, is as solid as the chush hariyah, as actually seeing it. Kamasham Chazal, you see this in the vernacular of Chazal, Lashon Chacham Marpe, if you pay attention to the way Chazal talk, Raya ani as divrei admon, when there are two stadim in a machlokes, right? And you're saying, I favor, it seems reasonable, logic is on the side of A versus B, Raya ani as divrei admon, I see it. It appeals to my logic. I hear the svara, not I hear the svara. I see the svara. Rayani es divrei admai. That's a bechin of riyah. Im kain ze mikri amuna mitzad chush harus bechin esanayim. If you are a chayker, if you are an Avram Avinu, if you are a Yisrael, and through the power of philosophical inquiry or other scientific methods, you've proven the existence of God and other ikri amuna, right? That's called, you are right, you see it. Whereas when you have what we commonly refer to as amuna pshuta, I'm not a big philosopher, I'm not a big thinker, but I feel it in my gut, or I know it's this way from my rabbeim, from my babbis, from my zaydis, right? That's a bechina of only hearing. There's only one problem in the Bnei Yisrael argument. Generally, we say, "Ein a daim shmiya l'riyah." In Hilchos Eidus, you can't hear Eid mipi Eid. Yeah? When a witness comes to court, you can't bring hearsay evidence. Like Reuben and Shimon can't come to court and say, "We heard from Moshe and Aaron that Boaz killed Pliny Almighty." That can't go. And a daim shmiya l'riyah, you got to be able to see it. Chush HaRuus generally is considered superior to the Chush HaShmiya. So why is he saying over here that Amunah Pshuta, Amunah B'Kabbalah, he's not using the terminology Amunah Pshuta, that's something I'm attaching to it. But what he calls Amunah B'Kabbalah, Midayre Dairis, that's a Bechina of Shmiya, but that's superior to the Amunah that comes about through independent philosophical inquiry, Amunah B'Chakira, which he says it's usher for a Jew to have that kind of Amunah, or to pursue that kind of Amunah. So first listen to an unbelievable historical quote over here. There are two Yavitzes in Jewish history. Rabbi Yankov Emden, we're across the street from a very chashuv Beis Knesset called Gvul Yavitz. There was a Senator Jacob Javitz in New York, represented the Liberal Republican. He was Ben Achaben from Yankov Emden. The Emden family name was Yavitz. Okay? That's one Yavitz in Safras Tairani, of great Chachmei Yisrael. But there was also one of the Grushe Svard, person who lived in 1492 and was expelled from Spain. He's known as HaChassid Yavitz. A lot of Svarim from HaChassid Yavitz. Zogt Bnei Yisrael. V'nei Kosav Rav HaChassid Mari Yavitz, Sefer HaChaim Perek Beis, Shara B'Gzeir Svar. Listen, this is Takariya. There's an eyewitness reporting. Somebody who survived the expulsion from Spain. This is what he has to say about Spanish Jewry. Shekol Oitzin HaChaykrim, She'omdu HaMachkar HaMuna Mitzad Chakiras HaSechel HaNushi. All of those philosophers, and Spain in the golden era of Spanish Jewry was replete with a lot of Jewish philosophy. Major works of Jewish philosophy came out then. Alba Sefer Ikrim, because most of the classic works of Jewish religious philosophy are from Spain. So he's saying, I don't know if he's talking about Gedolei Yisrael over here, but he's saying those Talmidim, those students, who their Amunah was predicated on Sifrei Chakira, on philosophical works, when the moment of truth came, when the Inquisition authorities told them, you've got to take up the cross or we're going to kill you. You got to take up the cross or you have to leave the country. Those are your three choices. Death, expulsion, or Chalila, conversion. He says, so these profound people, the big, deep religious thinkers, yeah? Hemiru es kvaydam b'yom zam. He's alluding to a famous pasuk in Tehillim, vayamiru es kvaydam betavnis shar eichel eisef. Talking about the Chet Egel, it says that the Jews swapped their glory, their honor, meaning their worship of the one true immaterial God, betavnis shar eichel eisef, for the image of an ox eating grass. Right? So that's what he's alluding to. What difference does it make if it's the form of an ox, it's the form of a crucifix? It's all sheker, because of it's all total lies, false religions and false philosophies. And these people fight that they swapped. They're willing to be meimed dasam. The Hanoshim, the Kali Adas, the women folk, who apparently weren't too philosophically advanced. The Kalei Adas, the people of minor intellect, people who didn't have the cup to study Meir Nevuchim, to study Kuzri. Couldn't wrap their minds around these deep philosophical concepts. The only reason why they were Maminim, why they were believing Jews. I have a Russian neighbor who speaks an old time Carpathian Yiddish. His word for what we call a frum Jew, a bagleipter, is a bagleipter, somebody who believes, a believer. The ones who are bagleipter, just because of the Kabbalah, just because Tati did it this way, and Zaidi did it, Abba and Saba did it this way, Kitchuas Hashem HaNechmed VaNaira. They're the ones who got burned at the stake and the oil of the face. They're the ones who had the inner strength to resist the Nisyanis of all Nisyanis, die as a Jew or live as a Christian. They died as Jews. V'nivchanu b'tziruf. They were tested with the greatest tziruf, matzref lazel, the greatest smelting pot, literally trial by fire, and they passed. Okay, so first of all, let's just stop to consider this for a moment before we get the Mnesatz's commentary on this. Just the historical fact, it's a hafladika thing. You would think that the opposite is true. Amunah Pshuta, it's superficial, how much they think about it. They never thought about it, never cost them anything, so that's why they believe. But now that they're facing pain, they're facing economic loss, they're facing loss of life, they'll drop it like a hot potato. But the deep philosopher, the principled people, the big thinkers, how could they go on living with themselves? How could they ever look at themselves in the mirror again? I know the truth. I know what's real and I know what's false. So it's counterintuitive, but it's a matter of historical fact. You have an eyewitness testifying. The Chassid Yavitz is saying, the Noshim and the Kalei Adas, they didn't shmadzich. Everybody else, not everybody else, but he's saying a disproportionate amount of the philosophical class of ancient Spanish Jewish society, they became conversos, they became Aranos. Or maybe they became overt Christians, maybe they didn't even bother keeping it at home. I don't know. The bottom line is they weren't Ayman bin Nisayan, they became Christians, they became Avdei Avodah Zarah. Now he's going to say a pshat in it. And this way, he's extolling Amunah Pshuta, and he's about to say something so profound and so brilliant. It's that interplay that these brilliant minds who attract the Chassidus loved and extolled the simplicity, the Amunah Pshuta. V'amanu binyanenu. Tam l'zeh. I gave a reason for this. Ki yadu ala b'em b'sayid Hashem, b'sayid Hashvira. It's well known to the Mekubalim, the secret of Shvira. I'm not a Mekubal, so I'm not 100% sure what he's talking about. But I know that there are these words that come across in Kabbalah's farm and in Sefer Chassidus called Tzimtzum, Shviras HaKelim, Pizur HaNitzotzes. I don't know exactly what these things mean, but the imagery, the mashalim that are always given are that, try to imagine a fire hose that wasn't made out of canvas, it was made out of some skimpy material. So the pressure per inch, you start pouring water through it with tremendous pumping water through it with tremendous pressure, it's going to burst out the sides. It'll never make it to the nozzle. So such a kind of a concept that there was too much air, there was too much light, and the kalim, the vessels that were supposed to contain this light, had insufficient capacity, they couldn't stand the pressure, and they just burst. What the nimshal is, don't ask me, go to your local Orthodox Makubal. But that's the imagery that comes across in the Svarim that I've read. At any rate, there's something called Shvira. And he says as follows. He says, Bechinas enayim hayabam Shvira. There's something cosmic called eyes. The eyes broke. The eyes had a Shvira. Masha'en ken bechinas enayim, whom he said at tikun agomer. The ears don't break. The eyes can break. Right? Too much sunlight, you go blind. Too much noise, the deafness is only temporary. You don't go deaf. Ears don't break. Your eyes could break. Skip the parentheses. Alkain, ha'amunah shu mitzad ha're'iyah yeshem be'efsharish l'kabel shvira bittul. If I'm telling you that amunah that comes from chakir, from philosophical inquiry, is a vision thing, it's a visual thing, it's not an audio thing, so that's why it can break. That's why it's more fragile. Shaykh to shvira. Masha'enken amuna shu mitzad hashmiya. Amuna that comes because you heard it from your father. You didn't see it. You can't see it with your mind's eye. But you heard it from others who saw it with their mind's eye. You only heard it. You only heard about it. Like the kabel, bittul, shvira, such things don't break. They're invulnerable. Vizehu, this is what the Navi means, is an illusion that the Navi has when he says, Shimu utchi nafshechem. If you hear, not re'u utchi nafshechem. Shimu, listen up. Utchi nafshechem. Then your nefesh will have a kiyum. Not your guf. Your guf may die, al kiddush Hashem. But your nefesh will go on forever. You won't be nichras me'amav because you worship the Avodah Zarah. Just a symmetry at the beginning, if you remember, when he was asked the questions on the Medrash, it says, that's the Chayfleib. And he's saying over here, the Navi said, if you chop this lesson, that there's a tremendous value to Amunah Pshuta, that's Shimu here, Amunah B'Kabbalah, Utchi Nafshechem. Then there'll be a chiyus for your neshama. V'oid, and furthermore, Amunah mitzvah Kabbalah hinehu birusha Avram Avinu. Now he's getting ethnic. He's moving. B'chlal, this is one of the great mysteries of Judaism. Are we a faith community? Are we an ethnicity? And it says we're both. And it's not separated. Our ethnicity is faith. He said before that Amunah is not just a Yerusha, it's B'layda, it's B'teva. It's natural for us. So this kind of an Amunah validates our yichus and connects us to the others. That's going to be his next argument. Void. Amunah mitzvah Kabbalah hinehu b'Yerusha ad Avram Avinu. It stretches all the way back to Avram Avinu. Shama kosh baruch ki yadativ. Him I gave the bechin of das over here. L'ma'ashe yitzaveh for the rest of the Dairis at Shmiya. Sheshbi pay Hashem yisbarach chayach hadas. Im kein hishtalshelus Amunah zu ma b'bchinas ein seif. Al kein ein l'Amunah zu seif. This Amunah comes, so to speak, and stretches back all the way to Avram Avinu. And where did Avram Avinu get it from? Avram Avinu got it from Kaviyachal, the Eibishter himself. Right? So the source of the Amunah that's B'Yerusha, is from something infinite, from an entity, from a being that's infinite, from the Eibishter who is infinite. Aval Amunah mitzad hachakira anushis, hinei ba mibal seif. All human beings are finite. All human minds are finite. All human consciousness is finite. So there's a gvul. If the source of the Amunah is from something that has a limit, so then the Amunah itself has a limit. There can come this awareness and become tests where the Amunah ends. That kind of an Amunah that comes from someone who is himself mugbal. It could be in the person himself. The person himself could be the religious philosopher who was aimed on the Ikrei Hadas. But it doesn't matter. You're also a Baal Gvul. And since your Chakira has a Gvul, your Amunah has a Gvul. Your Amunah has a Gvul. When it gets tested with the ultimate test, it's going to be found wanting and fail. Mashenka and the Kalei Hadas, the Noshim, the people who are only, their Amunah was only Amunah B'Yerusha, that connects back directly. Kaviyachal into Eibishter himself. It's Ein Sof, it's infinite, transcends everything, even fear of death. Top of the next column. V'hine. The Mitzrayim haya galus hadas. Lo yodu es Hashem. Part of the whole Indian of the Shibud of Mitzrayim was galus hadas. Ad she'edi Hashem yizbarach ha'yadei nefloisa v'yidatem kinei Hashem. It was a liberation of the das, of the consciousness. V'hine rotza Hashem yizbarach. The Eibishter wanted she'miyayim tzeiseinu me'etz Mitzrayim. He wanted that Hadas should be this infinite kind of Das that's plugged directly into him, Kaviyachal. It's infinite, without any chakira, without any kind of philosophical inquiry. They came to Rafidim. We're ongoing to saying, what was the sin of Rafidim? Rafi Yadayim and Atayra. Bittul Tyra, they weren't big enough Masmidim. He's saying, no, the problem wasn't they weren't big enough Masmidim. They got too sophisticated. They got too fine. They got too fancy. All of a sudden, everyone's a religious philosopher. You just had the ultimate. In Re'iyah, you saw Hashem in the Esamakas, in Kriyas Yamsuf, and now, Madreit with the grub a finger. Now you become a big chayker, a big philosopher. Yesh Hashem b'kibeinu u'mayin. There is a God. There isn't a God. If there is a God, is He here? It's the Hashgacha Pratis. It's a philosophical question. It's not just a question of an ingrate. It's not just a question of l'chayr, somebody who's unconscious. You just went through Yitzis of time and you can ask the question. We're not criticizing your midas. We're criticizing your mind over here. You are supposed to be Shmiya people. You are supposed to be people who have a Kabbalah from the Avos. Your whole Yitzis Mitzrayim was predicated on the Bris Ben Absarim, was Haftacha to the Avos. It's supposed to be the liberation of Yadas from these kind of things, from Chakiras. And here you ask the question, Hayesh Hashem b'kibeinu u'mayin? You're a philosopher. You're Plato. You're Aristotle. What are you doing? That's the Knisa Lepardes. That's the Geneva into forbidden territory, according to the structure of the Bnei Yisrael. K'dei sh'ti amun esuim b'tikun l'al mayad v'yina k'shbol r'fim v'niftach liba machrei hachakirais v'chakra yeshim v'kamen ha'ayin. Okay, I want to skip the Haggadah because we're running out of time. Look at the underline. V'yina amalek side hadas to sitra achri. You have to see the first Russian that he says, the Bnei Yisrael, but he works it out. You would have thought that the Greeks, maybe the Yavanim, are the side of das of the sitra achri, but he works it out that no, that's what amalek is. Amalek is the side of the das of the Sitra Achra. Zeluma Zebar Oisam Lakim. We were supposed to have liberation. Yeah, La Yadu Es Hashem. Vidatem Kini Hashem. It's all supposed to be about the liberation of das from the Sitra Achra. The das of the Sitra Achra incarnate. That's what Amalek is. He's not talking mitzad anti-Semitism. He's not talking about the first one to wage war. They represent this idea of philosophical inquiry, the das of the Sitra Achra. The Kirish Eschilu Heim Lifka Madas, since they themselves, Klal Yisrael, they did the Avla. They did it to themselves. They went into the Pardes. They went where they weren't supposed to go with their minds. Yeah? Miyad v'yava Amalek das the Sitra Achra. That's when the mad dog was sicked on them. Uvazat Tisbanin, you should reflect upon this. Kasha Amar Hashem Yisbarach L'Moshe Mitzvah Mechias Amalek. When he says the Mitzvah Mechias Amalek, Amar K'sayv Zay Zikar Zeicher, the Sim Be'oznei Yeshua. Okay, don't say put it in his hands or let him read the book. Zikar B'Sefer. What do you do with a Sefer? You read it. Yeah? V'yikru, the Karba Yeshua. The Sim Be'oznei Yeshua. The emphasis over here is the way you fight Amalek is with the Amunah that comes with Derech Messiah, not the Amunah that comes Derech Hakira. Ba'oznei daika, liyazar ma'ar shal elitin kayach la'amalek ayidei hakiris. The way to fight Amalek is with Amunah Pshuta, not with Hakiris. Shli Amunah b'bchina oznayim, who said a das to Kedusha b'li bittul. The infinite kind of das that's plugged back into the Ein Seif is the one of Shmiya, not of Re'iyah. Uvazem akbim kayach HaKedusha mevatel kayach Amalek das l'sitra achra. That's how you mevatel Amalek. Hashem mizeh bayim kol amuris rais v'deis kaisers. Think Amalek is just a Nazi? You think Amalek is just somebody who built a gas chamber? Gas chambers will kill the gufim of Klal Yisrael. What kills the neshamas of Klal Yisrael? Because once you get into Chakiris, well, if I'm letting the chips fall where they may, if I'm just going to rely on my little pea brain, on my little Kepler, yeah, maybe I'll get lucky, and maybe I will be Aymed on the Ikrei Adas, like the Kuzri, like the Mayan Avuchim, or maybe I'll kriegzich into determinism, into nihilism, into Eilam Kadman, all the long litany of kviras and false religions from time immemorial till our very day. V'zeh shenemar b'shal b'hochel lilchem b'chemes Hashem b'Amalek v'yashma shol asam. It said Meloshin Shmiya, the kayach of the ears, not the kayach of the eyes. You want to muster an army for Amalek? Yeah, just like Moshe was Sim Baznei Yeshua, Shaul was announcing things that are heard, not showing things that are seen. Hainu hishmiyum daika, liman asam dash di amuna etzel mitzah shmiya, uvazeh yenatzchu es Amalek. Okay, we're out of time. I just want to show one tiny thing. I always, I'm over Baltashka, so I photocopy 2 pages and never end up using it. Let's look on the Kuf Mem Gimel, the underlined part. He says so sharp. He builds his case that you shouldn't do chakiras. It's also to do chakiras. You're playing to Amalek and to the Sitra Achra. But listen to how sharply he says it over here. V'hinei, with the underline part in the left-hand column. Hachakiras li'isha Yisraeli cherpahu. It's a bezayin. It's humiliating for a Jew to be a chayker. Ki hamuni b'teva b'zar shel Avram Avinu, k'mo shekasafti. Umi she'en masbek le'akabala, v'roitz l'achar b'chakiras. Somebody who's not a bagleipter, a believer, because that's what Tati and Zaidi and Bobby and Delta Baba were. Hini hu kamerach has shon shen l'seder shtal shal yichas b'zar shel Avram Avinu. He's mufakfek on his own yichas. It's congenital. It's inborn. It's in our minds. It's in our bodies. It's in our DNA. It's in our makeup. If you have the right yichas, you shouldn't be going into chakiras. Fragst the big kasha, what the Rambam and the Kuzri and Rabbi Yosef Albay, and some might even argue Reb Tzadok HaKayev and the Baal Tanya, they weren't chaykrim. There's a very beautiful tradition of Jewish religious philosophy. They were chaykrim. What he's saying, they're all playing into the hands of Amalek. They're all, tzarech b'dicha krem. Don't be mishadach with them. They might have faulty yichas, these people. So let's look at the last paragraph. Yadati yedid hakayrei. I know, dear reader. Not dear learner, dear reader. B'roischa kol ha'ila advarim yikshulcha. That when you see all these things, it's going to be very share to you. You'll notice he said when you see them, not when you hear them. When you see all these things, harei kadmenenu osku b'chakira. What are you talking about? What are you, bashmutzing the Rambam over here? What are you doing here? K'mavur b'sefrayim. Halai bi'arti adav b'makam acher. Asher kol ma'aseim ha'il l'shem shemayim. Yes, they were chaykrim, but they were doing it l'shem shemayim. V'asu hakol k'fi ha'rashah. Okay, this is his teretz. You can take it or you can leave it, but this is his mahalach. Whatever they were doing in terms of writing works and obviously studying religious philosophy, it was a rasha. It was necessary for the times they lived in, but it's not l'chatchila. It's not the way to do things. I can't go into it, but I am b'sefer Achaim l'chassid Maria Ivit. So I just want to be messiah one thing. I'm a little bit over time, but there's a companion vart from the Chidush Rim. He keeps on emphasizing it's a design for a yid to do like this. There's a medrash pliya that says that before Yisrei granted Tzipira's hand in marriage to Moshe Rabbeinu, he made a t'nai with him. And the t'nai was, Ben hayilo itchilu avodah zarah. The first child should be an avodah zarah. Well, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu married Tzipira. So obviously he was maskim. How can he be maskim to such a thing? It's a medrash pliya. What's going on? So the Rim explains it like this. Yisrei was already al haderech l'tshuva, so to speak, at this point. He was towards the end of his study of comparative religion. Etvasot kefel tahar, and he was already going to be a maimin b'Hashem, and he was going to be Magayr. But everyone, everyone tries to raise children to replicate their own lives. So Yisrei felt this is a great way to come to the true Amunah. Yeah, you've tried all the rest, now try the best. Right? Now, Ati Adati Kigadol Hashem Mikol Halihim Kibadav Hashem Zadu Alam. That's what Yisrei said about himself. But his long and exhausting journey, there was no Avodah Zarah in the world. Chazal tells us that he didn't leave unworshipped. He examined every religious philosophy, Zen and Sufi and Achvesvas, or their equivalents in the ancient world. Now I know it's all Shlutz or Hevel. Now I know the Eibishter. Now I know this is real. That's a great way to be. You know what a confident Jew he must have been, knowing that everything else is Shlutz? That's what he wanted out of his Einikel. So Moshe Rabbeinu heard that. Okay, I hear that's a mahalach. Zog the Chidush Rim. Before Matan Torah, maybe it was a mahalach, but not after Matan Torah. I mean, he doesn't go into this long exposition that we saw tonight in the Bnei Yissaschar. I'm just trying to show you another antecedent in Jewish, in Chassidish Svar. And I'll just be myself mamish 30 seconds more. Everyone knows my day job is for the Jewish Heritage Center. It's a Kiruv organization. And Kiruv organizations, outreach organizations, have to work a lot with Chakiras. You're dealing with Jews disconnected from the Jewish Messiah. It's not a question of, I don't want to be Messiah. I'm rejecting what Bobby and Zay taught me. I need to study Plato. I need to study Mar Nevuchim. Lahavdil, between Plato and Mar Nevuchim. You talk to people who you tell them, do it because my Zayda was a Chazafresser. What do you want from me? So you have to prove it to them. But unfortunately, a lot of times, those who live by the sword shall die by the sword. People come to a lecture about scientific wisdom in the Torah, and they're blown away. And then 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, they go to another lecture. And there's a lot in radiocarbon dating that belies the Torah. You know, you study a shtickle of Gemara that talks about spontaneous generation. How you miyash of that? And those who live by the philosophical, or in this case scientific proof, or mathematical proof with the hidden codes, can sometimes die by that proof. Not even going into Sayyid Ashira and Einayim and Aznayim, just it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes when the approach is too philosophical, a bigger philosopher can disprove all of your philosophical proofs. Let's hope that we should be zeiche to the times of Mashiach Tzekenu, Mechia Zar Malek, and we Moa, Haaretz Deya, as Hashem, Kamayim L'Yom Mechasim.